Arguably the best game of Saturday's morning slate takes place in Madison as number 4 Alabama faces their first true test under Kalen DeBoer as they travel to take on Wisconsin. Can the Badgers pull off the massive upset, or will Alabama cover the massive spread and roll to victory? That's what we're here to talk about today. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad you could join us today. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home of our exclusive expert picks. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 6 years, and it will be 7 by the end of this season. So you do not want to miss out on those picks. Some of the best in the business for one of the lowest prices in the business. You're not going to find a deal like this anywhere else, a track record like this anywhere else. This is the place for you if you want to win big. Go check it out. The link down in the description below, and I recommend you hurry before the games really get going tomorrow. So let's take a look at this game. It's a highly anticipated game. Not many massive matchups in week 3, only 2 top 25 matchups, but a lot of games like this one that feature a ranked team and an unranked team, or 2 unranked teams that are going to provide a lot of entertainment and really, in the long run, are going to affect the landscape of college football, the landscape of these individual conferences. And that's certainly the case in Madison. And I want to take a look at the offense first, and we'll start with Alabama, the road team. Look, they still look like a well-oiled machine, right? There was all this concern across the board. When you lose a legendary coach like Nick Saban, how is the team going to adjust with a new coach and new schemes and new, just every new culture? And Alabama has looked fine. Granted, they've only played Western Kentucky and USF, but they've looked fine. Jalen Milroe has looked fine. He's already thrown for 394 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions in 2 games this year. He also has 4 rushing touchdowns already this season. The ground game has been what's impressed me the most. And yes, they haven't played the best opponents, but they had 334 rushing yards against this new-look Western Kentucky team, as TJ Finley would say, and then 199 rushing yards against USF. So well over 500 rushing yards through 2 games for the Crimson Tide. Jam Miller already has 194 yards. Justice Haynes has looked phenomenal, both of them rushing for over 100 yards this season. And then Ryan Williams. How about the stud freshman? He's been unreal. 6 receptions, 207 yards, 3 touchdowns. Half of his catches this year have resulted in touchdowns. He's going to be a star for at least the next 2 years before he goes pro. The star at Alabama for the next few years to come. This team is looking great, guys. And anybody wants to point at USF last week and say Alabama struggled. They only had 14 points through almost 4 quarters for the defense finally woke up. And that's true. But Alabama also had a lot of penalties. 13 penalties for 120 yards. I fully expect that to be cleaned up by Kalen DeBoer heading in to Saturday morning. Wisconsin, on the other hand, the question for them is when? When are they going to find an offense? Will it ever get good? We saw them dominate for many years in the Big Ten with the ground game. It's been so good. So many historic and great running backs have come through Madison and had dominated the Big Ten defensive lines. We know that, right? But when Luke Fickell came in, he brings in Phil Longo as the offensive coordinator. I really expected Wisconsin to be a little bit more balanced, maybe a little more potent through the air. And I thought that when they added a guy like Tanner Mordecai last year. I thought that when they added a guy like Tyler Van Dyke this year. And that hasn't been the case. They only scored 28 points in their 14-point win, not a major large margin there. 28 points in their 14-point win over Western Michigan in week 1. Only won by 14 against South Dakota last week, only scoring 27 points in that game. They have failed to eclipse 390 total yards in both of those games. And they haven't looked bad doing it. Tyler Van Dyke, 406 yards and a touchdown. Ches Malusi's looked fine, 134 yards and 3 touchdowns. But the thing with Wisconsin is they lack that explosive ability. Alabama owns the offensive edge by a mile. Alabama owns the speed edge by a mile. They own the explosiveness edge by a mile. Wisconsin, through 2 games, only has 5 plays that have gone for 20 yards or more. 5 plays that have gone for 20 yards or more. All 5 of those conveniently came last week against South Dakota. They are a slow offensive team. They want to eat you up. They want to be physical. They want to dominate the time of possession. And honestly, that's what Wisconsin's going to need to do. If you are Luke Fickell and you're the Badgers, you're saying, hey, we don't want Jalen Milroe to take the field. We don't want Alabama's offense on the field. So if we can eat up a lot of clock offensively and limit Alabama's offensive possessions, we might have a chance to win this game. You take a look at the defense. We'll talk about Wisconsin in a second, but I'll start with Alabama. They're still very good, right? Nick Saban was a defensive-minded guy. We saw so many elite defenses come through Tuscaloosa. And, the jury's still out if this is going to be another one of those elite teams. But right now, they look like they could be, right? They shut out Western Kentucky in week 1, holding the Hilltoppers to 145 yards. That's it. They did struggle a little bit last week against USF, allowing 206 rushing yards on the day, so the rushing defense was a little suspect, but the passing defense held them to 103 passing yards. They've got a pretty solid wide receiver core and a very solid quarterback as well. That's the interesting thing, right? Coming into the preseason, the major concern for Alabama was their, secondary. It was the secondary that everybody was a little bit concerned about. And so far, and granted they haven't played great teams, but they've played 2 FBS teams. They've played 2 very solid quarterbacks in Finley and Byron Brown, and they have dominated in the secondary. They have limited those passing yards. They have limited those explosive plays. I want to give them a lot of credit for that. They have 5 sacks on the year. They're generating pressure on the quarterback. The secondary, as we said, has been improved. And right now, I don't really trust Tyler Van Dyke all that much. He was a turnover machine at Miami. He's just been mediocre through 2 games right now with Wisconsin. So if I'm Alabama, if I'm Kellen DeBoer, I look at this game and I say, just stop the run. A run game that hasn't been that explosive for Wisconsin the last 2 weeks like it has been in years past. Stop the run. Force Tyler Van Dyke to win the game through the air. Can he do it? He really hasn't shown he can do that anywhere else. So really, do we think he can do it now? Probably not. So that's what Alabama's recipe should be. Bottle up that run game, force them into second and third and long situations, force them into passing situations. That's what Alabama wants. They're licking their chops. The secondary's looking good. Tyler Van Dyke, not the best. That's what the Crimson Tide need to do to win. Wisconsin, on the other hand, look, they're typically strong defensively, and that's once again the case this year, I would say. They haven't allowed over 14 points in their 2 games, only 14 to Western Michigan, only 13 to South Dakota. In those 2 games, they have failed, or I guess they have succeeded, not allowing those opponents to exceed 261 yards. They've held both those opponents to under 261 total yards. But the concern for me right now for Wisconsin is actually their rushing defense. You've played 2 teams in Western Michigan and South Dakota that you're supposed to win dominantly, and you've allowed over 114 rushing yards in both of those games. Granted, they're not racking up 200, 300 yards like Alabama's done, but those 2 teams really had a little bit of success rushing the ball against this Badgers front 7. And if Western Michigan and South Dakota are doing that, what's a team like Alabama going to do that had over 300 rushing yards in week 1, nearly 200 rushing yards in week 2? That's my concern for Wisconsin. Can they stop the run? And furthermore, even if you do they have the guys to account for Jalen Milroe, who is a dangerous dual-threat QB? He's not just some pocket passer. Yeah, I think he's rushed for a little over 80 yards so far this year, so he's not running as much. That could come out later, but he's improved as a passer. We know he's dangerous as a runner. It's a multi-edged sword here for Wisconsin. Bottle up the run, great. Milroe can beat you through the air and with his legs. Bottle up the pass, great. Alabama can torch you on the ground with their legs. I mean, it's a bad situation for this Badgers defense. So if I'm Wisconsin, look, the bottom line is you got to stop the run. You got to try to force as many 3-and-outs as possible. It's funny, we're talking about Alabama, just shut down Wisconsin, get them on the field as much as possible, get your offense on the field as much as possible. That's what the Badgers offense doesn't want to do, right? The Badgers offense wants to take their time, and limit the amount of possessions Jalen Milroe has. Well, if that's going to be the case, the defense has to do their job too. Get Alabama's offense off the field as quick as you can to get your offense on the field as much as you can. Wisconsin's not going to go out there and have a million explosive plays. We know that, but they could eat up the clock. And if Wisconsin can force Alabama to play their style, to slow the game down, to limit the amount of possessions, the Badgers will have a chance to win. There's no doubt about that. But ultimately, will they? Will they be able to do that? Will they have that recipe for success? Will they upset the Tide on Saturday? No. No, they will not. It's not happening. I know there's a lot of Wisconsin's a tough place to play. Camp Randall Stadium's a very fun, tough place to play. I know that. Been there. It's electric. I love it. But this Alabama team is on a different level. Wisconsin has shown nothing really last year under Luke Fickell, and I know they battled injuries. They didn't really show anything last year. They haven't really shown anything in these 2 games to make me believe they can win this game, let alone keep this game close. I don't think they can. Alabama will win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. They will win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. The run game will be dominant. Wisconsin will struggle to stop it. Jalen Milroe, of course, the X factor with his legs, the explosive playability, and the speed of Alabama simply going to be too much for the Badgers. It will be a slow start. I think these guys are going to feel each other out early on. Then Alabama breaks free, kind of like they did last week against USF. Very slow start, lit up over the final few minutes in the 4th quarter to win by double digits. I'm not saying it's going to be a 4th quarter explosive like USF, but Alabama will ultimately pull away and win by at least 14 points, although I wouldn't be surprised to see this game be something like a 31-10 type game, winning by 3 touchdowns. The Crimson Tide, they roll. They're 3-0, and they pass the first true test under Kalen DeBoer. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home of those exclusive expert picks, some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 6 years, and we will make it 7 by the end of this year. So go check it out. You do not want to miss out on these picks. The games start tomorrow. Go sign up and win big with us. Place your bets with our expert picks, including our best bet section today. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.